Hello, this is Dr. K. In this video, we're going to talk about how to access the database using Java objects. In fact, we're going to talk about two different, though similar, approaches to this. The first approach uses Enterprise Java Beans, or EJBs, and therefore requires an EJB container. The second approach does not require an EJB container. If you recall from a previous video, we use a Java application server to serve Java-based websites. Some application servers, like Glassfish and Wildfly, support all the Java EE technologies, including EJBs and JPA. Other application servers, like Tomcat and Jetty, only support servlets and JSPs. Therefore, EJB-based solutions to interacting with the database won't work if you're only using Tomcat. Since Tomcat is the most popular Java application server, this is important. In fact, one of the reasons for Tomcat's popularity in industry is that it is a lightweight server. It doesn't give you all the bells and whistles that a heavyweight server would give you, but as a result, it uses less memory and CPU and can horizontally scale more efficiently. Note that we are not going to address framework solutions here, like those used in the Spring framework. Spring, like EJB, handles many things for you. In the non-EJB approach we talk about, you are responsible for doing things like handling transactions and instantiating objects with appropriate implementations. The NetBeans Affable Bean tutorial uses an EJB-based solution for interacting with the database. The tutorial uses the Glassfish server, which includes an EJB container. As shown here, there are two main parts to this solution: entity classes and session beans. NetBeans has wizards for creating both of these class types from your database: the entity classes from database wizard and the session beans for entity classes wizard. Entity classes correspond to the tables in your database. They contain fields that correspond to the fields of the table they represent. And they have getter and setter methods for each field. Each entity, that is, each instance or object, corresponds to a record or row in the table that the class represents. Session beans associated with the entity classes have by default the basic database CRUD functionality for the entities: create, read, update, and delete. These methods can and should be modified to reflect the needs of your application. We have talked a lot about the model view controller architecture, but sometimes when enterprise applications are discussed, they are talked about in terms of layered architectures. In a layered architecture, each layer or tier has a well-defined task, and it passes the remaining work to the layer below it. Here, the presentation layer is the user interface. It may be a browser or a desktop application. The business logic layer defines the business rules. The persistence layer deals with interactions with the database, and the database layer consists of a relational database like MySQL that stores the persistent objects. In the book EJB3 in Action, they discuss the technologies at the different layers. Java Server Faces is used in the presentation layer. Since we're not using the JSF framework, our presentation layer will consist of servlets and JSP. Enterprise Java Beans comprise the business logic layer. Java Persistence API is used in the persistence layer, and a relational database management system is used in the database layer. One benefit of enterprise Java Beans is that enterprise applications often require certain features, and many of these features are built in to the EJB framework. You can activate many of these features as necessary simply by providing the correct annotations. Here's a list of some of the most important features. Not all of these features are used in the Affable Bean tutorial, but security, transaction management, pooling, and thread safety are among those that are. This slide is just a reminder of the way that enterprise Java Beans work. They are plain old Java objects that you can add special services to by using annotations. There are two main EJB types, session beans and message-driven beans. Message-driven beans are triggered by messages sent to a message server. They are used for sending asynchronous messages between system components. Session beans are invoked by a client to perform a specific operation. Once the operation or set of operations is complete, the bean is destroyed or returned to the EJB pool. Session beans can be stateful, stateless, or singleton. Stateful beans store the state in instance variables, and the state is maintained across multiple method calls. Stateless beans are used for operations that can be completed by using a single method call. And singleton beans maintain the state and are shared by all the clients. The most common type of EJB, and the only kind used in the Affable Bean tutorial, is the stateless session bean. A typical session bean executes on behalf of a single client, is transaction aware, and updates shared data in an underlying database. Session beans do not represent the data in the database. That is what entity classes do. Entity classes are associated with the Java Persistence API, which we'll talk about in the next slide. A typical session bean is also relatively short-lived. It is removed when the EJB container crashes or is stopped, and the client must recreate a new session object in order to continue the business operation they were trying to accomplish.